Hey everybody, Eric for President here. This chat needs a little TLDR or else it's going to get very confusing. First of all, thank you for all those who leave me very positive comments, send me nice DMs who are really appreciating this new type of content. It makes me very happy. It means the world to me. Thank you for those. I'm fully aware this is not the content that everyone subscribed for. It used to be news, but this is the content that makes me happy. I want to keep doing, and I promise to keep working on the format and bettering my interviewing skills. That way these get better and better. Thank you all for the support. Number two, I was so excited to talk to the members that we'll be chatting to today that we got a little ahead of ourselves, and this episode needs a TLDR about what we're talking about or else it gets very confusing. On this chat, we had the couple members from Welcome to Respite on, Lyndsie, Scoggin, and Braden Roy, who talk about their experience. Now what this is an experience, an immersive theater experience all inside VRChat where you are the actor in it. I took on the role of Alex in this story that they were providing, and what I thought were NPCs are actually real-life actors, who as we go through the story will have to riff off my responses to pull me through this. Through this 30-minute experience, I went through about 4 to 6 VRChat worlds worth of content, but all in one seamless experience that I didn't even realize was doable in VRChat. It's an amazing experience, and that's the TLDR of what you need to know about what they're talking about before we get into it about 20-30 minutes into the episode. But it's an amazing experience, and we need to talk about VR theater, what VRChat can do, storytelling in VR. It's a very exciting episode, so you need to know that. And last but not least, we had a little bit of technical issues on this. You'll notice one of the webcams going a little wonky through the majority of this, but the audio is still crisp and good. Tech issues happen, but the content is what's meaningful, and I'm really happy to still share this conversation with them. Again, thank you for those who are supporting this new type of content. I love all the great messages and great comments, so please leave them. It means the world to me. If you miss anything, Eric for President Clips channel down in the pinned comment. All the clips of every one of these chats goes there, so support there means a lot. That's enough talking. Let's get into the show. And by the way, I'm feeling a little bit of a power trip right now because last time I spoke with you guys, I got invited to your domain, and it was beautiful. It was fun. There's no problems, but I'm a little bit introverted in VR, and I thought maybe I'd have like a second to converse, get wine and dine, let's know what's going on, but no. It started right away, and I said it in VRChat magazine and to you guys, to everyone, like top VR experience up there in the list. Story-wise, definitely number one. But Lyndsie, Braden, welcome to my home this time, and I know you guys have been busy. How have you been?
Good. Very, very busy indeed. Yeah, we've been. I don't know. There's a lot of coals in the fire. That's not the expression, but. Been busy.
Close enough. But this is a unique experience where a lot of times I don't have my guests kind of give the spiel of what's going on because they're a little more free-flowing, but you guys have such a unique standalone experience that if we do not just start by going over what it is, I feel like everything we talk about just gets lost. So tell us about Welcome to Respite, because I know everyone is probably going to want to know about that first.
Yeah, of course. So Welcome to Respite is a virtual reality experience that kind of plays out like a narrative game, but it includes live theatrical performances. And in fact, it actually started out as a live immersive theater show in Los Angeles a couple years ago that got adapted for virtual reality. So immersive theater is really unique, and virtual reality definitely is the perfect platform to do it on, because versus it being on a stage, the audience member is actually a part of it and is interacting with the characters. And specifically with Welcome to Respite, the story is revolving around you or Alex.
Absolutely. The way that I used to describe it to friends and family that kind of having a hard time wrapping their head around all the weird stuff I'm doing is it's like a narrative video game, as Lyndsie said, like think Life is Strange or Gone Home, that sort of thing, except for instead of pre-recorded NPCs, every single character that you come across is played in real time by a live actor remotely that's there interacting with you, seeing you in the same space as you, making every decision that they have. And throughout the story based on how you act, what you say, what happens in the moment, which is really cool, based on the fact that for a fact that the experience that you have is unique and wholly your own, and no one else will ever experience it quite the same as you have.
Yeah, and for those listening, this experience, it's inside VRChat. To my knowledge, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it is Quest and PC VR compatible. Um,
Yep.
And I had the luxury and the nicety of experiencing it on the Oculus Quest, although I was doing it through virtual desktop, and it was a flawless experience, something that I didn't even know VRChat could do something like that. I want to start a little outside VR, though, because I was actually just talking with Alex VR on my news streams, and we were talking about exposition and story in VR specifically, and how exposition can be very tiresome when I'm in VR. I'm not used to it. It's a lot of info dumps, a lot of talking, and it's hard for me to feel engaged. And it seems to be a common trend among some people where they haven't emotionally connected inside a VR game yet as much as they maybe have in other mediums. So outside of VR, if you only have 30 minutes to convey a story, because that's about what I think what Welcome to Respite was, about 30 minutes. What are the elements of a story outside of VR that you have to hit for someone in 30 minutes to emotionally connect with them?
That is a really good question. Well, first, I think that Welcome to Respite, I guess if I'm using that as an example, there is a ton of narrative going on, and it goes deep as well. It's very nuanced in terms of the layering of the narrative and everything like that. And when we're talking about story and conveying story, it's kind of identifying the most important parts of that, and then how can you kind of tell that without just having to say it? Because you're right, any kind of story where I'm just having to sit there and read a bunch of exposition or listen to a bunch of exposition, it's very uninteresting. It's really hard to stay engaged. And I think what the approach to this is that we can give you some of that information. It can unfold in front of you through different ways. So for example, there's this whole backstory to the mom and the dad. So in the show, you're going back into a childhood memory, and you come across your parents, who of course you as the audience member don't know these people. But within that relationship, like I said, it's really nuanced, and there's a lot of tension between them. And instead of saying, okay, this is what's happened over the last year, we're saying, we're planting these lines in there that are hinting at it. So maybe we're not giving you the full story, but in a lot of ways we think that's okay, because then it leaves room for you to interpret it and maybe imprint your own experience upon it. But often we try to do it within the narrative, within the experience itself, getting across the exposition that we've planned out in the past. And ultimately, I think it makes the script stronger for that, because it leads to more depth in it and makes the characters feel more real.
What was both your backgrounds before all this as well?
I professionally, I do IT. I'm a systems architect, but also dabbled in marketing and graphic design, illustration, web development, a whole bunch of different stuff. Actually went to school for film production, but I kind of segued into this because I also have a background in game development design, and kind of fell into it as all of the different parts of my world kind of intersected as one. Long time VR person, I think I would backer like 50 or something of the original Oculus
wow.
dev kit. So I've been kind of riding this wave before finally deciding to jump in.
And you, Lyndsie?
Yeah, and so my background is in theater. So before I even started in immersive theater, I was just doing regular stage shows. I ended up getting into doing performance for haunted houses, and I kind of looked at that and was like, wow, that's really cool. You can have people actually walk through a story. And then I moved from Idaho to California to do that. And then I found out it was an entire industry, and just kind of inserted myself. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And they're like, okay. But originally I started out working in escape rooms and developing narrative for escape rooms to create more depth to them. Then I quickly transitioned into just immersive theater and creating experiences for people that were story driven, and then created Coact Productions from there. And yeah, so that's history. That was about 3 years ago that I created my company. And all of the productions that I did prior to this one were in real life. So this was actually my very first endeavor into the virtual reality space. And that was brought on because a couple of our other producers for the show, Deirdre and Steve, had come to me during the pandemic, and they had been starting to work in virtual reality. And then they're all like, hey, we've been kind of looking at doing a show that's more intimate and it creates these moments that really connect with the audience member. And remember that show you did? Yeah, we kind of want to do that one. And I was all like, okay, let's try it. And yeah, the rest is history on that one.
Do you think this was a little bit of product of the times then? Like, say COVID just never happened, would you be in VR right now? It's interesting to hear that maybe this was a pragmatic approach to storytelling that you wanted to do.
There's I think absolutely that's something that was a catalyst for this. I think it would inevitably happen in the future, but in the same way that a lot of the emergent storytelling that we've seen over the past year has taken place, I don't know that it would have occurred on the same time scale. When I first started, just shy of a year ago, a group of people that I met, none of which that I'd ever met in person, that we all had a passion for virtual reality. We had a passion for storytelling and performance, and we came together and formed a company known as Ferryman Collective and made our first production as kind of a haunted house type thing in October. And I don't know that any of us would have come together as one in that way in this same time frame if not for that. But because of that and the fact that, you know, those our performers in our group, you know, they couldn't work because of the pandemic, and with immersive theater you have your audience right there with you, so we just kept on going and running, and made another show, Krampusnacht, which was nominated for the Producers Guild of America Innovation Award, and in comes Lyndsie and Welcome to Respite. And but yeah, I think that absolutely, for all of the terrible, awful things that have happened due to the pandemic, the silver lining is things like this, areas of creativity which were born out of necessity.
One of the thoughts I had is, like, when I first started, you guys invited me. I think the Bearded Bard was the one who kind of told me about this first. Didn't really know what I was getting into. I've been to theater plays, theater shows. But being inside it, I don't think I was mentally prepared as much as I thought I would be. You know, we talk about VR being an insanely useful medium to have better and immersive experiences. And I think that is, I absolutely believe it's true. However, at the same time, when it's so wildly different than an experience that I've known, I'm 31, and for that amount of years, theater's been theater in a certain way. And flipping the switch in my head to go from that experience to a virtual reality experience did not translate one-to-one immediately for me. I can say it only happened, I'll give you guys credit, because of how great you guys pulled me through it and made me feel comfortable, which was a big factor in how enjoyable it was. But from when you guys were testing this out, I'm sure there's plenty of testing and plenty of trials before you invited people to try this. Are you seeing disconnects? Are you finding people to have trouble transitioning directly to virtual reality if they don't have experience in that? Was it fun? Or what are you seeing from people when they try these new experiences for the first time?
It's interesting. In terms of virtual reality versus plays, people that are coming from not being in virtual reality and experiencing this for the first time, that's a whole other thing, because, you know, you have the struggle of people, VR sickness. Some don't have familiarity with how to, you know, use analog sticks and all that, and there's trouble there. But even those folks, they fall hard into the world that we've created. And in terms of people that are familiar with VR, but they're not familiar with this format of, you know, being a character in real time with live actors, not usually, but sometimes you'll see a little bit of hesitance at the beginning where they're not quite sure what their role is supposed to be, and like where the boundaries are and that sort of thing. But we kind of pull them through, and it's usually by the second question that mom has given Alex, the main character, the audience character in it, the person has kind of shed their skin, so to speak.
Yes.
Which is one of the great aspects of virtual reality, is you can kind of shed your ego. So usually by the second question in, before they're even in the house, you can kind of just see like they're in it. It's odd. You can see their body posture change almost sometimes.
Right, gain confidence in what they're doing.
Yes.
What are you doing specifically to help them through that? I was part of it, and I can kind of probably answer for you guys, like at least in my experience after this. But from trial and error, from doing this over and over again, from pulling up or people who are playing Alex through this story, what are you finding is pretty typical on the stopgaps of what's making them so disconnected? Is it they have problems identifying that this is not a game? Are they having problems identifying the structure of it all? Like, what are you seeing? Because I can tell you after this what kind of pulled me out of it, and I'm curious if it's similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because each person is really different, but even especially for the Alex role, we give them some prompting ahead of time. So we do pull the different audience members apart. Some are more of a spectator role, but Alex is essentially a performer in it, not to scare anybody away. It's not a performerism. We expect anything of you other than to be yourself and to play with us. So we do some prompting. We make sure they know how to pick things up. We make sure they know how to sit down. We try to get them excited and feeling like a kid. I think that's a really big one, is just setting up the mood for it and getting them into the right headspace and letting them know that they can interact, and if they ever feel unsafe or have or anything like that. So even with all of that, as Braden said in the beginning, sometimes you can see that people are sometimes pretty hesitant to know what to do or know how far they can push things, or maybe I think it's usually gamers will take it too far and they're all like, I'm going to run out in front of the car, which we don't recommend.
Well, what's the worst thing real quick too, I want to clarify just in case anyone's lost here. So to give you guys a little context, in this experience, you are playing a character, and the other characters in there are people you see here and other people who are for this project. So you are live time going through a performance with real life actors.
With a real person.
Yes, with a real person. And this VRChat experience does not go to the Void Club or anything like that. It is more. I can't drop too much here because I don't want to spoil anything. But take what you think VRChat is, times it by 10, and I don't mean that like. That's not exaggeration. Times it by 10 on the animation, what they can do. You will feel by the time you go through this story, 30 minutes or so. To me, it felt like 4 or 5 different VRChat worlds that I was transported to, but it is a seamless transitionary experience. So I think for these questions that we're saying, we might want to clarify that. So for example, when I started, it did take me a little bit into the house situation to understand my role. One of the biggest things that helped me, and I wonder if this is something that you've noticed, is the little tiny acts that remind you that there's a human on the other side. So for example, the character that I was a child, everybody. So stature's fairly low. My parents in the game are parents. They're higher. You have to look up when you look at these people. That's an interesting dynamic. It's authoritative right away. You remember that now they're parent figures. And when you bent down to meet eye level with me, I think that was the first moment that I relaxed. Because for there, it's humanizing. And it didn't feel like an avatar anymore. You bent down, eye level with me. Now it's another human behind it. And that was what flipped that switch for me between very uncomfortable, not gonna lie, was very uncomfortable at the beginning, to, oh, no, this is just me in front of just hanging with people who are going to guide me through this. So that was my epiphany to it. But I could only imagine what some of these actors that you're pulling in might do. Can you give me any good stories of anyone who's gone a little too far off script?
There's a lot. We've had, without giving spoilers,
Yes.
There's moments where there's alcohol involved. The parents have to pull out bottles of alcohol briefly, where Alex has run up and they're grabbing the bottles, and we're like, no, and we being the parents and acting as that role as to say yes, and we have to go into it. So we each act as parents would if an actual 7-year-old child were, acting up like, hey, Alex, no, you're too young. We need to put you on timeout or whatever. But we play with them, or saying no and being kind of grumpy kids, because that's the thing, the change in scale, which is a huge affordance of VR and something that is incredibly helpful of helping the audience embody and be just instantly kind of transported to like, oh, I remember this, like a part of my body remembers being this size and looking up at people. And when that happens, usually they'll just go with it and it'll be a version of themselves, which is a bit more innocent and kind and gentle and stuff. But sometimes they'll take a hard left and go like, well, I'm 7. What's my character? I'm going to be the bad kid.
Yeah, we have some good Alex, bad Alex kind of things going on. I think though that what's great about this production, for both the audience member and us as performers, is that it's really it's kind of on railings. You know what I mean? There's an objective here. We have a specific narrative that's going to play out no matter how you react to something. If you want to ruin it for yourself, that's up to you. Most people don't. Most people are really great. There's kind of variations in personality, but that's different. Most people want to see what happens next. So for the most part, if bad Alex decides to boil the stuffed animals, I mean, we react, as Braden said, as parents do, and that really works out for us in this particular show. We can't say moving forward that that's always going to be the case, but but in this particular show, being a parent is really helpful because I can't remember who it was. It was so funny though. They just kept cussing the whole way through. Why do I feel like it was you, Eric?
No, I promise that was not me. I was on my P's and Q's with you guys, but typically, I'm not gonna lie, I would be cussing. I have a sailor's mouth. I'm a northern boy at heart.
Yeah.
But no, I was on my best behavior.
You just want to speak freely. Yeah, absolutely. But then when you're a kid, and we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that. Alex just dropped an F-bomb. They're 7 years old. Like, we have to, Alex, what did you just say? Go sit down in your chair.
Oh yeah. No, I'm thankful haptics aren't a big thing now, because if I said that in VR, my mom would beat my ass. Like, I'm not gonna say that kind of stuff when I'm a kid. But
Braden, we need to program a little paddle in there that'll just smack Alex around. And it was the era. It was the era.
There was a moment towards the end. I can't. No spoilers. That's enough between you guys. You probably know what, where I did want to start cussing a little bit when I was real off guard right towards the end. But I had a feeling. The funny part was too is that all times in that in this experience, if I was at any point left alone, to a degree, one, I felt extremely uncomfortable. Because by the time, it's only 30 minutes, and I would say by the time you're alone, it hasn't been that long, but I did feel alone, felt very off. But then in the back of my head, I also understand it's a game to a degree, and I'm sure I'm being listened to. And I'm just always like in the back of my head, be like, I'm alone, but they can hear everything I say, so shut up, Eric, shut up, don't say anything stupid. Alone. Which I think about, how's the audience work for this? Because I did not have the opportunity to really understand. I'm aware that there can be an audience member. We talked about the after, but I don't think I fully picked up on how the audience works for this.
Yeah, I guess the thing that we didn't talk about that we probably should have talked about at the beginning that is kind of an important part of this experience is that it was inspired by the true stories of people who have dissociative identity disorder. Some people who aren't familiar with that might know it as multiple personality. It's not called that anymore, but yeah. So in the ID, there's multiple states of consciousness, and the disorder is derived from early childhood trauma. Which is a very sad thing. We do take that very seriously in this show, and I've done a ton of research to make sure that, at least as much as possible, that we're portraying it in an accurate way. So what what we can do in virtual reality, though, even though this was originally a one-person show, like when we did it in real life, we literally had one audience member show up. Now, because we're in virtual reality, we have the magic of being able to make these people invisible. So we can have spectators, which is really great for people who are nervous about any kind of interaction or don't really want to be in the limelight. That I know some people are uncomfortable with that. And yeah, it's just more accessibility to this narrative and this experience. So we have cast them in the role of an alter or an alternate state of consciousness or another personality, and essentially that they are within the mind of Alex and they are able to roam free. There's different things placed around for them to find or do that Alex has no access to. So Alex doesn't see the same things as them. The alters are watching Alex and watching the interactions with the parents, and they can't interrupt that. But what they can do is that when Alex is in trouble and is being haunted by their trauma, that they can come forward and help protect Alex. That's what their role is in that, is as protectors. So there's times where this trauma that manifests as, I guess we could say that it's the monster in the closet, that when Alex is scared, when Alex feels alone, that they're not alone, that there's people there to help protect them. And we thought that was really beautiful and also indicative of, I mean, not literally, not in the way that we've done it. It literally happened like that. This is theater, of course, it's representation. So, but we wanted them to be able to play a part. So we gamified it a little bit. It's not a game, but.
No, I think that's important because at least, so I don't, and we can get into this, but I don't know what the grand goal is for this, right? However, at the same time, I'd have to imagine if there was no audience at all, it's not going to hamper the experience, but for only one person at a time to take this in, I don't know if that does it justice, because it's almost trying to think of a good comparison. So I like movies. I'm a huge movie buff. I love movies. If I see a movie at the theater, that's where I prefer to see it. I like that experience. But I do also like then watching the extended cuts and behind the scenes, because I like to see the story that I like, but from multiple different angles. And an audience member is going to see the story from an entirely different perspective that's going to give them a whole idea of what this can do, how this can work. So then when you get feedback or you hear people talk about it, how I talk about it might be completely different than how that audience member talks about it. But both are extremely important and extremely valid to create a cohesive story and something that people are going to want to talk about and keep coming back to. I thought I heard in our talk afterwards, did they have the ability to, like, was there more info that they would also get out of this, where different things that have the story with it as well? Or did I hear that wrong?
They're kind of like fragments of memories that are scattered throughout the environment that the alters or our spectator audience members can explore and find, that will give them insight into further details about Alex and their life at home and their memories and their experiences, that the person who's in Alex's role cannot see. They're at no point visible to them, in addition to the different points of interaction where they're more visible in protecting Alex, as Lyndsie said. But yeah, one of the cool things is you can choose your point of view. You can, if you're an alter audience member, you can literally stand in Alex's shoes and view things from their eyes if you choose to. Or you can, go and see what's going on in a different part of the house, or view an interaction in a different way. You can kind of do your own choreography, so to speak.
Have you got any feedback on that? I'm curious on if you've heard anything on the way that an audience member could look through my eyes. Is there any sickness concerns that you heard of that? Because there, motion sickness in VR is a real thing, and I'm wondering if the dissonance of not embodying that character, but solely just looking through their eyes. Have you got any feedback of that being disorienting at all?
Actually, no. I mean, there's been people who have experienced VR sickness in different capacities. It's usually people who are brand new to VR, or will come out and say, this is something that always happens to me, but not for that specifically. No.
Yeah, well, it works a little differently than I think you're imagining it because it's not programmed into where they'll actually like embody the actual Alex avatar and only see
Sure.
like the movement of what
Yeah.
Alex is doing. They're still just themselves, but what they can do is just place themselves because they're invisible.
Okay, that makes more
Nobody
sense.
knows where they are. Well, we know where they are, but they could just stand in the same place. So if they want to tilt their head this way, so it's not like you're being like taken through. Because you're right, I think that would be pretty nauseating.
Oh
I
yes,
could
yeah,
imagine
yeah.
so. There's a lot that I would like to get into, but it's like one of these things where it's such a good experience and so compact and short and full of stuff that almost anything we talk about kind of gives too much away. All I can say is for anyone who wants to experience something like this, I agree with you guys that I do think this is something that's going to be bigger and bigger. The Underpercents did a form of theater that a lot of people resonated with, was a really fun time for them. And these kind of experiences are only going to get more and more popular. But going outside, specifically Welcome to Respite, when it comes to the concept of VR theater, what are some of these things that you see happening in the next like 5-10 years? Where is the trend of theater going? Like, what are we trying to experiment with, and how can this be even more impactful to future users who want to try stuff like this?
That's a
Well, immersive theater generally it has been getting bigger and bigger. I think that what I've learned from it, and also why I'm so passionate about it and like to go to this kind of thing, and then like to spend my creativity in that arena, is that movies are typically a passive activity, right? You can sit
Yep.
down there, it's great narratives, beautiful cinematography, but it's not embodiment, and that's not something that you can get with something that's just a film, right? So as experiencing something is completely different. It's visceral, you feel it, it's happening to you. And something that's exciting about it is that you could step into the shoes of somebody that you would never understand the experience of. Now, it doesn't have to be like the child and like dissociative identity disorder. It could be a spy. I've worked on a spy show before, or I mean, you could be an alien if in any of the. It depends on the narrative, whatever we can create, but there's something that's really emotionally engaging about this kind of work, and getting to do this with live performers is uniquely engaging. Like, you're really building a relationship. Even if they're playing a character, there's a real emotional connection there. So I just don't think that that's something that you can replace, and I think a lot more people are seeking that out.
absolutely. It's one thing that I've noticed show after show after show is each time that you have new people that are coming in and experiencing something like this for the first time, and I mentioned it's the same way in the IRL type
Yeah.
version of immersive theater, but each time they come in, they'll be like, "Wow, I didn't know stuff like this was possible. This was outside of my realm of understanding and frame of reference." And then from that point on, they are hooked for life, basically, and they show up at every single consecutive show, and they spread the word to their friends, and as more people know that you can have these sorts of experiences from your home, from anywhere in the world, that audience continues to grow. But as Lyndsie said, the big thing for me is the fact that, okay, so a lot of people refer to virtual reality as an empathy machine, and sometimes that's accurate, sometimes that's less accurate. But for this type of experience specifically, just being there in the moment with actual live people that are interacting with you in real time and also kind of invisibly moving you forward in one way or another to kind of keep you in line, it leads to a level of embodiment of the character, of putting yourself in the shoes of whoever you're representing in a way that, in my experience, just isn't possible with a scripted, pre-recorded thing, even if there's an unlimited number of branching narratives that you can choose from. It's just something that we're not capable of doing outside of having a real live person there with you. And over the next 5 to 10 years, I think the big thing will be seeing how this can scale, both in terms of the number of audience members that can conceivably see something like this
Hmm.
and making it sustainable, but also in where having these sorts of live interactions, live performances, and emergent immersive storytelling can take place in things that aren't necessarily exactly like this. Maybe it's a more traditional game type experience that happens to have actual NPCs that are real people or any number of other things.
Yeah, this is a good. I like one of the comments you made. So there are pros and cons to all this, but one of the things I noticed that I tried to stop doing, but I think it's inherent and I've grown. To me, I've grown up doing it in a way. But like when I watch a movie or a TV show or something, you're so sometimes even if you're enthralled in the story, it's great, you love it. You're still disconnected to a degree, and like I think it's very safe to say that a lot of times if you're watching an Avengers movie or you're watching Lord of the Rings, something big, if you see something that just doesn't make logical sense to you, you internalize it and go, why did they do this? Why did they do that? And you have that opportunity. When I was in Welcome to Respite, or many VR stories, but like again, I said I have a problem sometimes connecting with VR stories, and this was one I did, so I noticed it very distinctly that I don't have time, or maybe I do have time, but I don't have the mental capacity or care to analyze it. I'm not analyzing why is this happening? Does that make sense? I'm living in the moment and not reflecting on what makes sense and what doesn't. I'm just reacting in a way. I'm more reacting, and it seems a little more healthy in that sense for focusing on the story, which can be good if the story's great. It might also hurt if the story's not so great. Um, but I noticed that, especially the comment you just made, I don't nitpick things in VR as much. I just don't have the care or time to, I guess. That's the
Right?
right way to say it.
It kind of washes over you, and you just kind of try to grab onto something and hold on. If that experience isn't giving you something that seems strong enough, so to speak, to hold on to, then it just washes you away, which can be good or bad. But yeah, having something that can hold you in place as you're immersed in that is very difficult to do in VR, but when it's done right, it's more effective than any other medium in my opinion. Because
Yeah.
yeah, likewise with story, a lot of times it's just all the different stimuli coming at you all at once. It can be a lot to handle, and that can sometimes let the long monologues just like go in one ear and out the other as you're you know stuff's exploding and whatever around you.
Yeah, I definitely feel like when I go through an immersive theater show over like watching a movie and sometimes even playing games, it depends on what kind of game. I feel like I'm on such an adventure. Like I just want to know what am I going to come across next, Because it's you. You're there, you're exploring the space. You're the one interacting, and so it's just like what am I going to unlock next? And it's just such an adventure and a journey.
I think we like I'm stuck in my echo loop. Like I love my positive VR stuff. Like it's awesome. It's great. But I also like reflecting sometimes on the things that aren't working because or not maybe not working or just aren't value added because those are where we learn the most on what can we do next time to make it better. So from your guys' experience of say as close to one, so the VR theater experience to a traditional theater experience, what's missing the most? So when you guys were making this, what did you realize was probably in fact maybe worse than it was IRL? Was there anything that really hit you that this is a big stopgap, that it's not bad maybe, but it's definitely worse than it would be if it was IRL?
There's I'll let Lyndsie speak on this more deeply, but there's it's kind of one of the main cons to doing this in VR is also one of the most exciting parts and one of the reasons that I was personally drawn to do it, because it's just an area that hadn't been adequately explored. And that's the feeling of connection between two people when you're in proximity. There's certain things that just don't translate unless you have, face tracking, mouth tracking,
Yep.
and all that different stuff to pick up minute micro expressions and eye contact and all these things that just don't translate. And no one's really focused in on that in a huge way that I'm aware of, or made that their kind of thesis in doing it, of trying to make a person feel connection and closeness and if you give someone a hug, how it can sometimes feel like an actual hug, even though there's not a hug, but your brain tricks you. That's something that is extremely, extremely powerful with IRL versions of immersive theater, but it's quite difficult to do in VR. But that's also why I personally wanted to do that, and something that we focused super hard on. Very impressed with. But I'll let Lyndsie touch more on that.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it. Braden is exactly right. Especially with this production, there's a lot of underlying things going on that and nuanced. When when you're working with an avatar, it's kind of like a puppet. So
Yep.
so you can move in certain ways. And again, if we had better technology as far as access to it, it exists out there, or some of it exists but maybe isn't up to par. Kind of gets into that uncanny valley kind of weird facial expressions thing, but we cannot express things in the same way with an avatar that we can with a real human being. When mom reaches out to touch your hand and say, "Hey, are you okay?" You're not feeling that on your hand. And when mom and dad are having a really subtle argument, there's hardly any subtlety to it anymore. I mean, there is. We have really great performers and everything, and actually our avatars do have expression, so we again puppet them to kind of mimic what we would like things to look like, but it's never going to be the same as having a real life person there with you. And I think something else that is really interesting about live immersive theater over virtual reality immersive theater is just how visceral it can be. We can engage the senses fully. So if when people walked into the house before and mom's cooking dinner, you can smell food cooking. It smells like home. You can in the original one, we actually had mom make you snacks, so you get to eat and engage your taste buds. Again, the physical touch and everything. And again, our brain does trick us. It is really interesting, the hug effect, where when somebody's like leaning in, you're like, oh, they're very close to me. Yeah, okay, I feel you there. And we're blessed to be working with such amazing performers and everything, because it doesn't take away from it. It doesn't take away from it in the same way that I thought it would, at least. So more often than not, we've found ways to utilize the platform to enhance the production. So the parts that are maybe missing there, you don't notice them as much.
No, the hug moment, that, like I said, that like the bend down, the hug, that was the switch for me. I'm not even joking. It was really weird. Really weird. I don't know if that's like a negative way to say it, but first it was uncomfortable. Then I'm like, personal bubble. It definitely in my personal bubble right now, which is weird because personal bubble in a VR space is already almost an oxymoron in my brain because it's not real. But there's a personal bubble that feels invaded. Then the hug comes like, oh, okay, fam, this bubble's now yours. Come on in, like, and now I was good for the rest of it. What? No, I just thought that was perfect. It seriously, the bubble dissipated right when you did that. Now, I got a question though, because I know this was your kind of foray into VR doing this. Are either of you, Braden, I know you were early backer, but I'm assuming Braden maybe more, but how much VR gaming do you both do?
Decent amount. Lately I've been too busy to dive too deeply into things, unfortunately, but I don't know. I've checked off most of the major boxes. Half-Life Alyx was like my game of the year last year, like far and away. Spent tons of time.
You and everybody else, right?
Yeah, and all sorts of stuff.
How about you, Lyndsie?
Yeah, nope, none. Almost none.
Almost none.
So what was kind of funny was that, again, I didn't even have a VR headset when they asked me if I wanted to do this. So the first thing I did was go out and buy a Quest 2, and I spent about the first 2 months just exploring different apps. I didn't really know what I wanted, or I probably should have done some research into like some of the better rated things, but I couldn't spend a ton of money and I didn't have a ton of time.
No. Do it live. It's more fun that way.
So I just kind of went around and explored what was fun for me, whether it be, well, I guess, in relation to what I could use. So, yeah, there was certainly a few things that had stood out to me, but at the end of it, we ended up going straight into production, and there goes all your time. So,
Yes.
um,
The
I'll have
reason
to
I
get a
asked
couple
that question,
recommendations from
it's
Braden.
the reason I asked that is it's a little, it's a tough question, but the reason I asked that is because, like I said early on, is that I've noticed a lot of VR games. I'm not, and maybe it's a testament to just my emotional quotient, but I am having a very hard time with a lot of VR games emotionally attaching to the story. I don't blame the games too much because it's so early on. Developers already have a ginormous task just to make a game fun and entertaining. So it's no slight to them. The create a 10 out of 10 on every checkbox is unreasonable, and I'm never going to ask that. However, at the same time, for people like yourselves who are so entrenched in story, it's very paramount to the experience that you're building. I ask if you play games because I'm curious if you've seen anything from games you've played or even seen that you go, hey, this is maybe something missing from it. The low-hanging fruit of the storytelling experience that maybe VR games could start dabbling and incorporating to maybe help the user connect better. Have you guys noticed or seen anything that maybe for a developer would be on the low-hanging fruit side? Because they can't. There's so many limited resources that they have right now. I don't expect them to go all out.
In terms of story specifically, one thing that I've noticed with a lot of VR games is that, frankly, it takes the back seat a lot of times, where you can tell that the primary focus, for better or worse, or better and worst, usually, is that the main focus is getting a mechanic in there or multiple mechanics that justify the use of VR rather than, just copying, pasting a generic shooter or whatever. So they spend most of their time finding that mechanic and making that work. And then as they're doing it, they're of course thinking about story as they go, but the story doesn't tend to be the driving force, and it is kind of an afterthought because of it. And with that, you often see kind of divergence in what you're doing within the experience and what the story is trying to tell you, where it's ludomorphic dissonance or whatever the catchphrase was for a while, where the actions that you take don't line up with the story or the experience being told, and it causes you to not connect on a deeper level with that story. And that's something that seems to be pretty common with VR games, and a big part of that comes down to, a lot of them don't have a huge budget or a lot of time to focus on that. But I think that it's something that we're going to see expand and become much more concrete and more polished as time goes on, and as more people get their hands on VR and the audience expands to justify spending longer time and putting a higher budget behind it.
Knowing that you played a lot of Half-Life Alyx, just like everyone else, I think it's pretty safe to say that out of all the games out there, that one might have one of the more cohesive story focus out of everything out there. What were some of the things that you noticed in Half-Life Alyx that were specific, that you could tell someone implemented this specifically to aid just the story alone? It wasn't meant to be a VR mechanic, wasn't meant to be a way to just waste time, but what did you notice that was actually done that was directed to the story?
A lot of it was environmental storytelling, which isn't anything entirely novel, but just the little notes on the wall. Like, I think right at the beginning, you go down to like a washing room and you see like a lost cat poster and stuff like that. And a lot of that is not so much story as much as world building. But those sorts of touches kind of help you live in the experience and make the story feel more real. Those things that make it feel like a living world. Or the characters, how they will respond to certain things you do and make you feel part of it. Like if you throw something at an NPC and they'll be like, what are you doing? Little touches like that. So not so much any one thing is coming to mind as much as many small things, little touches that help solidify the world as a living, breathing place that has history before and after you put your headset on, that makes you be able to enjoy and embody the experience in a much deeper level than you otherwise would be able to.
Yeah, I'm entirely with you. The environmental cues, I think one thing I noticed from Alex was as you progress through the story, the Citadel, if you actually look over the horizon, if anytime you get outside and can look, as the story goes on, it actually gets closer. It's a visual cue that like, okay, we know we're trying to get there. That it's obvious, but it could have easily just not gotten closer. We could have easily just gone through place after place, and all of a sudden now we just got to an area and like, oh, hey, there it is, I'm here. But no, every single level that you have the opportunity to look over horizons, you will literally see it be closer and closer and closer. And this now fragmented level design isn't fragmented anymore. It's specifically an entire world that I just happen to have a couple loading screens on. That's it. No different than, I don't know if you've played any of the Half-Life Alyx mods, but the BioShock one that someone's recreated BioShock in. I've spent a lot of time just reading the posters and reading the broken stuff on the ground and realizing, oh, every single thing here had a purpose. It wasn't like, even if you look outside to the water, it could have been, they reuse a lot of assets, that's fine, but it could have been literally the same exact copy and pasted water scene, and I would have never, no one, like 1 out of 100 people would have noticed. But if you actually look outside and pay attention, there's enough variance where it's deliberate on the choices, even throughout the many chapters it has, and those environmental cues add quite a bit. But yeah, I'm with you on that. We are getting close to time on this one. I do always like to ask everyone who's joined us, what is making you kind of the most happy with virtual reality? I know both you have so much going on that you're not really playing it as much, which I think is great. I think that's like the most unique perspective that we don't have on this as much. There's been a few people I have on here that don't play a lot of VR because they just have other stuff going on, but then others are so entrenched in it that you get your blinders on. What are you guys seeing that's making you excited for the future within it?
Accessibility, honestly. It's not exactly something new at this point, but in the grand scheme of things is. I know that the whole evil overlords aspect isn't exactly great, but the fact that what used to require, $1,000 PC and bunch of wires and the additional cost of a headset and all that being stripped away for the average person to go spend the same amount of money that they would spend on a Nintendo Switch and have a fully functional portable VR system that requires no additional know-how or accessories. That is extremely exciting. Makes me happy to see that so many people are experiencing this once super niche thing and digging into it and getting excited about it and thinking about ways that it can be explored and improved and changed. That for me is far and away the biggest one.
Yeah, for me, and again, I don't get to go out and experience a lot of it, but as a creator and coming from the theater background, just its potential for experiential storytelling. There's so much you can do in virtual reality that wouldn't be possible in real life or would be extremely expensive in real life. And I think that right now is a really great time to be getting into that as well. So I'm really thankful that I found these guys when I did, because there's so much opportunity right now and people are looking for really great content. So being able to tell stories using animations and as Braden said, the accessibility with getting people in from all over the world is just something that we couldn't have with a real life production, and that part is so exciting to me.
Absolutely.
That is, yes, I absolutely. Okay, for reference, I am based in South Dakota, which is there's not a whole lot of theater and catering to the arts and entertainment and that sort of thing. It would have been inconceivable for me to experience an immersive theater production without flying halfway across the country to one of the coasts or something similar. So up to date, unless you were based around LA, around New York, around Chicago, or London, and a few other exceptions, there was no way to experience these. But now anyone in the world, any country, doesn't matter, can go and join the same space virtually and experience these sort of things live without there being a barrier there. And the artists that are making it are able to then do the opposite and spread their message and their creativity and be able to connect with all of these people that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. And that's extremely exciting.
And I forgot to mention it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't do this. Congratulations for the recent nominations. And I know that this is if I'm wrong with the phrasing, please let me know. But I believe this is a fairly closed experience right now while things are progressing. But for the general user who's in VRChat, is there going to be anything coming down the pipeline that they'll be able to experience, whether this or a new project in the coming times?
Yeah, absolutely. After we're done with our festival run with this show, we'll be taking it public, at least here in LA, and I'm sure a few other places around the country as the opportunity comes along, that we'll be able to set up booths and everything where people can actually come and experience the show, or just if they have a headset already, be able to do it from their own home. So we will be going public and selling tickets to the show. We just don't know exactly when that is yet. We have to get through our festival run first. So
Yes, you'll do it after you take home the awards from there, because I have
yeah, that's right.
That's
After we
right.
win.
What category is it? I know I'm kind of dragging. Like, what category is it? Out of like, what do you know what you're up against?
There's a few different awards, but generally it's an immersive category. We won't know what we actually get until the end, but we're up for a few immersive.
Yeah, I don't remember the names of them.
I don't. Whatever you guys are going up against, I feel bad for them, and I don't mean that since I'm a little biased here, but it don't get much more immersive than virtual reality, and I don't think anyone's done anything at the scale. At least I've never heard of it, never seen it, never been part of it for sure. The scale of this, and I feel bad that the audience. I can't talk
There's
more
a lot
about
of stuff
it.
A lot of stuff that's super like insane, like that you would not expect from VRChat or even a Quest-based standalone app that's in there that we can't really talk.
Yeah, that's what kills me about this, because it's that comment I made at the beginning about it being VRChat times 10. It's like, I can't overstate that or understate that enough. It really is not what you are thinking. And a lot of people who try VRChat like once, especially people who tried it in like 2018, 2019, early 2020, it's not the same thing anymore. And what is possible is frankly, like, it's the new PCVR, because what it can do even on a Quest, it's exponential. So I can't talk about that, but I can't wait for hopefully people to experience that kind of thing. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if anybody is interested in getting tickets or seeing this show or anything, you can go to our website. It's www.theseverancetheory.com and sign up for our mailing list. We'll be releasing updates as we get them. And hopefully we'll see you there.
Absolutely. I'll put all that in the video description. If you guys, their website, the links. If you guys want clips of this, it'll be on Area for President Clips. If you'd like to hear my write-up about it, a plug for VR Trend Magazine, join their Patreon. I don't remember how much it costs, but it's basically like a single beer at a bar, I think, like $5 maybe. So super cheap, bi-monthly magazines, and Welcome to Respite is in the 6th copy of it, and I think you can buy that individually. So plug to VR Trend Magazine. Thank you, Lyndsie and Braden, for coming by.
Thank you.
And please stay in touch with me when award season comes up, because I'm very excited to hear how you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, guys. As always, we'll see you next time, Space Cowboys. Peace.